7 common egg mistakes are quietly harming seniors over the age of 60. And mistake number 1 is going to completely reshape the way you think about the eggs sitting in your refrigerator right now. You've probably heard eggs called one of the healthiest foods on earth. And for your age group, that reputation is well earned. Eggs have been celebrated by nutritionists, recommended by doctors, and lauded as a nearly perfect protein source. But what almost nobody talks about is what happens when the way you prepare those eggs turns that same nutrition into a genuine health concern. I've spent my career studying what happens to nutrition and health as we age, and what I found is remarkable and important, because these mistakes don't announce themselves loudly. The eggs still look fine, they still smell normal, they still taste the way you expect them to taste, and the damage builds quietly, meal after meal, week after week, for months before anything feels wrong at all. Eggs are loaded with complete protein, choline for your memory and brain health, and nutrients that protect your vision at the exact stage of life when your eyes become most vulnerable to decline. All of that is real and well documented. But that same nutritional value is precisely what makes the mistakes ahead worth paying attention to. You're eating eggs for a specific reason. You're counting on them to do something important for your body. And if the way you're preparing them is working against you rather than for you, that trust becomes the problem. Research consistently shows that a significant number of adults over 60 make at least one of these mistakes regularly, and almost none of them suspect it, because these aren't sloppy kitchen habits at all. They're routines passed down from parents and grandparents who had no reason to question them decades ago. They're habits ingrained so deeply that they feel like the right way to do things. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 7 most common egg mistakes seniors make, ranked from the one that seems completely innocent and harmless, all the way up to the one responsible for more emergency room visits than any other item on this entire list. Let's start the countdown now. We're working backward from 7 to 1, so let me begin with number 7 today. Number 7 is eating only the egg whites and tossing the yolk into the garbage. If you've been scraping the yolk into the trash for years, you are far from alone. That habit started with advice that circulated for decades, telling people to cut cholesterol wherever they could find it. For a long time, the egg yolk was treated as one of the worst offenders in the entire food supply. But the yolk is where nearly all of the egg's actual nutrition is concentrated and waiting for your body. The choline that your brain depends on for memory and focus, the lutein and zeaxanthin that are directly associated with protecting against age-related macular degeneration, one of the few natural dietary sources of vitamin D, which matters more now than ever because your body produces less of it from sunlight as you get older. Here's what changed the conversation. The 2015 through 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans removed the long-standing cap on dietary cholesterol entirely. More recent research supports the idea that for the majority of people, whole eggs do not significantly increase cardiovascular risk when prepared healthily. Unless your own physician has specifically told you to limit yolks for a diagnosed condition, whole eggs deliver far better nutrition than whites alone. That matters more now, when your body absorbs nutrients less efficiently than it did at 40 or 50. Your brain and your eyesight are 2 of the first things that begin to fade quietly with age. Keeping the yolk on your plate helps protect both of them. That means staying sharp enough to follow a conversation with your grandchildren and steady enough to drive yourself to the grocery store instead of waiting for someone else to take you there. Number 6 is cooking your eggs in a pool of butter, oil, and melted cheese. This one never feels like a problem. It feels like a Saturday morning treat. But it's one of the simplest ways to turn a clean, protein-rich breakfast into something your cardiovascular system has to fight against. A basic 2-egg breakfast on its own is a lean start to the day. Toss in a thick pat of butter, a generous handful of cheddar, and a splash of vegetable oil in the skillet. And you've just pushed the saturated fat content of that single meal past what many cardiologists recommend for an entire day. Heart health guidelines suggest keeping saturated fat to a small fraction of your total daily calories. One loaded omelet can eat up most of that allowance before lunch. and none of it tastes excessive while you're eating it. That's what makes it so easy to repeat every morning. But this kind of damage is cumulative. One indulgent breakfast on a holiday weekend is not the issue. Eating eggs prepared this way 5, 6, 7 days a week can gradually push your cholesterol and inflammatory markers in a direction that raises your risk of heart disease and stroke. The fix doesn't require giving up flavor. Use a non-stick pan with a thin layer of olive oil or cooking spray. If cheese is non-negotiable, use less of a sharper variety. A little Parmesan or aged Gouda delivers more flavor per bite than a handful of mild cheddar. Add spinach, tomatoes, or peppers instead of more dairy. Your heart doesn't need you to give up eggs entirely. It needs you to stop burying them under fat so you can keep walking around the neighborhood and staying active on your own terms. Number 5 is leaving cooked eggs sitting on the counter for hours, especially during family gatherings. This mistake tends to happen at the exact moments when food safety is the last thing on your mind. A Sunday brunch with the whole family, a holiday morning with grandchildren running through the kitchen, a buffet spread that lingers on the dining table while everyone talks over coffee. Cooked egg dishes, whether it's a quiche, a deviled egg platter, or a breakfast casserole, should never stay at room temperature for more than roughly 2 hours. If the room is warm, that window shrinks to about 1 hour. Beyond that, bacteria multiply to levels that can make you seriously ill, even in food that was fully cooked when served. This matters more at your age because stomach acid, one of the body's first lines of defense against foodborne bacteria, often decreases as you get older. Certain common medications can reduce it even further. That means the same plate of food that your 35-year-old son shrubs off might send you to the emergency room. If you're hosting a meal, always keep hot dishes above 140 degrees Fahrenheit using a warming tray or slow cooker to maintain food safety. Keep cold dishes like egg salad nestled in a ball of ice. Once the meal winds down, refrigerate leftovers promptly in shallow containers and use them within 3 to 4 days. When there's any doubt, throw it away. A wasted serving of quiche is a small price compared to 2 days in a hospital bed. Number 4 is spreading bacteria through cross-contamination without even realizing it. Here's a scenario that plays out in kitchens across the country every single morning. You crack 2 eggs into a mixing bowl. You wipe your fingers on a dish towel hanging by the stove. Then you reach for the bread, touch the handle on your coffee mug, or open your daily pill organizer to take your morning medications. In every one of those actions, you may have just transferred bacteria from the eggshell to something you're about to eat or put in your mouth. Even clean-looking shells can carry bacteria on the surface. That bacteria transfers to your hands during cracking, hitching a ride to every surface you touch afterward: the dish towel, the counter, the cutting board, the faucet handle. If any of those surfaces contact food that won't be cooked again, the bacteria goes straight into your system. There's a second layer to this issue: cutting boards. Many people crack eggs on the same board they use minutes later to slice fruit or bread without any washing in between. This happens frequently. It feels efficient, but it's one of the most documented sources of cross-contamination in home kitchens, and it happens most in kitchens where habits have been automatic for decades. The fix takes seconds. Wash your hands with soap and warm water immediately after handling raw eggs before touching anything else. Keep a dedicated bowl for cracking. Clean any surface that contacted raw egg with hot, soapy water. This isn't only about your own safety. It's about everyone who sits at your table. Your grandchildren, whose developing immune systems are still learning to fight off bacteria your kitchen routine may be spreading. Number 3 is ignoring the date printed on the carton. I already know what some of you are thinking right now. You've eaten eggs past the printed date for decades without incident, and nothing bad ever came of it during all those years. And for much of your life, that was probably true. Your body could absorb the hit. Your immune system could handle the extra workload. But that margin has narrowed, and it continues to narrow with every passing year. That date is not an arbitrary number stamped there by a marketing department. It represents the point at which the egg's natural internal protections begin to weaken. The membrane becomes more porous. The environment inside the shell becomes friendlier to bacteria. And all of this happens while the egg still looks, smells, and tastes perfectly normal. For someone in their 30s, eating one of those expired eggs might cause nothing worse than a day of stomach trouble and discomfort. But at this stage of life, especially if you're managing diabetes or taking medications that affect your gut bacteria or digestion, a single episode of food poisoning from old eggs can escalate quickly into something serious. Dehydration becomes a real danger because many older adults already have a diminished sense of thirst and don't replace fluids fast enough. One thing I've learned treating older patients is that emergencies rarely begin with something dramatic. They almost always start with something that felt completely ordinary the day before. That expired carton of eggs sitting on the middle shelf of your refrigerator is exactly that kind of ordinary. It doesn't look dangerous. The eggs don't appear spoiled, but the bacterial load inside has shifted invisibly, and you can't see that change with your eyes alone. But there's a method doctors and food scientists recommend that has nothing to do with the date on the carton. The float test. Fill a bowl with cold water and gently place the egg inside. A fresh egg sinks straight to the bottom and lies flat on its side, completely submerged under the water. An egg that's aging will tilt upward or stand on end because the air cell inside the shell expands as the egg gets older. If it floats to the surface completely, discard it without hesitation. These are the eggs that have changed most significantly inside. One of the simplest habits you can build is basic rotation. Every single time you bring home a fresh carton from the grocery store, slide it behind the older one, so you always reach for the oldest eggs first when you need eggs. It takes only 5 seconds and removes the guesswork completely from your morning routine. Number 2 is eating your eggs runny, soft, or undercooked. This mistake has gained traction over the last several years, and social media deserves a large share of the credit. Scroll through any food account, and you'll see slow-motion videos of golden yolks breaking open and flowing across the plate. It looks beautiful on a screen. But what looks appealing in a short video is not always the safest choice at your breakfast table. Both the white and the yolk need to reach a safe internal temperature to eliminate harmful bacteria. At that temperature, both parts will be completely set, not rubbery, not overcooked, simply firm. A fully cooked yolk and an overcooked yolk are two different things. You can have a yolk that's cooked through and still tender. A foodborne illness that causes a day of discomfort for a younger adult can become something far more serious for someone over 60, particularly if you're living with diabetes, heart disease, or any condition that affects how your body fights infection. The immune system becomes less responsive with age. Recovery from even a moderate bacterial load slows considerably. And I want to acknowledge something. Many of us grew up in homes where runny eggs were simply how breakfast was served. Your mother cooked them that way. Her mother did too. Nobody questioned it because nobody had a reason to. That's not a criticism. Food safety knowledge has advanced. The recommendations shifted based on better science. What carried no consequence at 25 does not carry the same margin at 65 or 75. One more thing worth knowing. Color alone is not a reliable way to judge doneness. Some eggs appear fully cooked on the surface, while the interior hasn't reached a safe temperature. The only reliable method is a food thermometer. Cook until both white and yolk are completely set. A firm yolk is not a sacrifice. It's the version of breakfast that keeps you eating at your own kitchen table instead of lying in a hospital bed. And now, the mistake that sits at the very top of this list. The one hiding inside the recipes you love most. Passed down through the people you miss the most. Number 1 is using raw eggs in family recipes that never get fully cooked. Homemade eggnog at Christmas when the kitchen fills with family. Caesar dressing prepared the way your parent made every Thanksgiving morning. Chocolate mousse prepared the way your grandmother taught you on a Saturday afternoon in her kitchen decades ago. Soft custard pies that remind you of Sunday dinners. These dishes carry weight that goes far beyond food itself. They carry memory, they carry identity, They carry love. And that emotional connection is exactly why this mistake slips past even the most careful people who know better. Raw eggs can harbor salmonella bacteria inside the egg itself, not only on the shell surface. A clean, uncracked, properly stored egg can still contain live bacteria if it was never heated enough to destroy them completely. Once those bacteria reach your digestive system alive, they multiply rapidly. For seniors, a salmonella infection goes well beyond a few unpleasant days of discomfort. Age-related changes in the digestive tract and the immune system make it harder for your body to contain and fight off the infection. Some medications commonly prescribed to older adults can mask early warning signs, allowing the infection to progress silently before anyone realizes something is wrong. This is the mistake I encounter most often in my own practice, because it almost never feels like a conscious decision at all. Nobody sits down at the holiday table thinking they're deliberately taking a food safety risk. They're simply making the eggnog the way it has always been made, using the same glass bowl their mother used, measuring with the same worn wooden spoon passed down through generations, following a recipe written in the handwriting of someone who may no longer be here to cook beside them. That's exactly why this mistake persists so stubbornly. It carries love, and love makes it invisible to even the most careful eye. And it's not limited to recipes that obviously call for raw eggs. Hollandaise sauce drizzled over eggs Benedict, soft meringues on top of pies, lightly baked custards, even licking the spoon while mixing cookie dough for baking. Many of these beloved preparations never reach a temperature high enough to fully eliminate bacteria. But here's the genuinely good news. You do not have to give up a single one of these recipes forever. Pasteurized eggs are heated just enough to destroy harmful bacteria, while behaving exactly like raw eggs in every recipe you know. Same texture, same whipping capability, same taste. They're available as whole eggs, liquid whites, liquid yolks, and carton blends at most grocery stores. Simply swap pasteurized eggs into any recipe that calls for raw or lightly cooked eggs without any hesitation. Your Christmas eggnog, your traditional Caesar dressing, your family mousse will taste exactly the way they should, without any risk you've been carrying all along. Now that you know the 7 mistakes, here are 3 tricks professional cooks use to make eggs safer and easier to work with, especially if gripping, peeling, or cracking has become frustrating or difficult. These tips have been used in restaurant kitchens for years, and they work just as well in your home. Professional tip number 1 is the 20-minute rule. Placing eggs straight from the refrigerator into boiling water causes a temperature shock that often cracks the shell immediately. Instead, let your eggs sit on the counter for about 20 minutes before cooking. That brief rest reduces cracking significantly, produces a more evenly cooked egg throughout, and gives you a smoother texture when you peel it open. The eggs cook more predictably. The yolks come out creamier. The whites set more uniformly. Professional tip number 2 is the vinegar method. Add 1 tablespoon of white vinegar to your boiling water before you place the eggs in. If a shell cracks during cooking, the vinegar causes the egg white to coagulate almost instantly, sealing the breach immediately. As a bonus, eggs boiled with vinegar peel far more cleanly and easily. The shell lifts away in large pieces instead of clinging stubbornly in tiny fragments that frustrate your hands. If arthritis or reduced grip strength makes peeling frustrating, this small change makes an enormous difference in your daily routine. Professional tip number 3 is keeping pasteurized eggs in your refrigerator at all times for backup. This connects directly back to mistake number 1 and family recipes. Once you know to look for the word pasteurized on the label, you'll spot them right next to regular cartons at any grocery store. Keeping 1 box on hand means every family recipe that calls for raw or lightly cooked eggs can continue exactly as it always has, with zero added risk whatsoever. And remember, one of my patients who thought she had to accept digestive problems as part of aging discovered that simply following these 7 guidelines changed how she felt every single day within weeks. She had more energy. She enjoyed breakfast again. She stopped worrying about food safety. That is what informed choices look like. That is what prevention looks like. Here's what all of this comes down to fundamentally. Eggs remain one of the best foods you can eat after 60. They belong on your plate every week. They should be fueling your brain, supporting your vision, strengthening your muscles, and giving you the energy to live on your own terms without depending on anyone else. The 7 mistakes we covered today are not reasons to fear eggs or avoid them entirely. They're blind spots. They're gaps in knowledge. And now that you can see them clearly, every single one is simple to correct. That's what the healthiest, most independent older adults already do. Not because they're paranoid about food or obsessed with every detail. Not because they've become rigid in their thinking. But because small adjustments in the kitchen add up to years of staying capable, staying sharp, and staying in control of your own life. You're not fragile. You're informed. And being informed is what keeps you cooking delicious meals for yourself instead of depending on prepared meals from the store. It's what keeps you hosting your family for holiday dinners year after year. It's what keeps you honoring the recipes that matter to you and have meaning, both to you and to the people you love. It's what keeps you independent. If this video helped you understand how to prepare eggs better after 60, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel, because there's so much more to understand about nutrition at this stage of life and how it directly affects your independence and your health.